UFC 255, Figgy versus Perez and Shevchenko versus Maya. We're going to look into that, as well as some Twitter questions. Alright, let's look into it. Good morning, everyone. It's a nice early November day. It's about minus 20 today outside. It's a little chilly. Next weekend is American Thanksgiving, and I probably won't have a podcast out. So happy Thanksgiving to our American friends, because they probably didn't wish us a happy Canadian Thanksgiving, because that never happens, because Americans really always forget about other countries' holidays. We have UFC 255 today. It's a decent card. I think people hate on it a little too much. I don't think it's that awful. It's not the best though. Let's be fair. There's a couple good scraps on the card in the prelims and early prelims where I think that's where a lot of people get lost because people aren't terribly familiar with these people. And as a fan, I think you should get not invested. Don't fucking ruin your day just to go out of your way to watch this. But I'm sure people will watch highlights and etc. of the fights. And if we get some good finishes and good fights, which with these matchups are very possible, I think that will open the eyes of some fans that trash the card pretty heavily. I think that will show them that there's some potential to this fight, but I could also be dead wrong, and these people could suck ass, and we get no highlights, and then, yeah, that would suck. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Let's wish the best for the card. But I hope everyone has a good weekend. It's a great, lovely weekend we have today. The first fight, Figgy versus Perez. Figgy's a minus 280 favorite. I guess it's pretty obvious who everyone thinks is going to win. Figgy is incredibly strong and fast, durable. He's very athletic. I think he's a great champion for that division because, let me put it this way. For a division that was dying and was having trouble with that whole narrative, having a champion like Figgy, I think, is good because it shows the division's strength in terms of it was sort of like when DJ and Henry were champions or fighting at the high level because it showed how explosive and how able these champions are able to finish fights, and Figgy is definitely in that category if he's able to finish fights. The only thing is, I think I don't want to say Figgy isn't as good as the others, although that's like a large, that's a large ask because DJ's one of the goats and Henry has a very good resume with his fights, with the double champ and everything. I'm not saying Figgy is as good as those guys. He has to prove himself as the champion to get to that point. What I'm saying is he has a good path to get to that point, but I don't think he's as he looks like he could be more beatable than DJ and Henry. So he's a great champion in terms of being exciting, but it's also, I think there's a potential like he can be beat. He's not like unbeatable, so that makes the division healthy in the sense of the challengers that the division can develop have the opportunity to win, and it won't be just a stale division like it has been in recent times. I think it's very good for the division that it could have a champion that's, beatable. But Figgy could definitely prove that wrong and just beat everybody. I think someone like Yan is in a similar situation. I think Yan's hype is definitely way stronger. I think people do definitely think he's unbeatable and could be a potential GOAT, which I'm not denying that. I just think that he should have to prove himself a little bit, and I think Figgy's also in the same boat. He has to prove himself a little bit. He has to go out there and show that he's a dominant champion, which he definitely can do. I think he wants to put on a good performance. So I think this is something that he's just gonna perform really well in this fight. He's gonna show his skills and his power, and I think he's gonna put Perez away. I think Perez is definitely a dangerous opponent. He has a high strike rate. He's very athletic. I think he could definitely give problems, but I ultimately think Figgy, with his power and striking ability, will put him away. Shevchenko versus Maya. This is just a typical Shevchenko fight in this division. It's unfortunate because the girls that she's fighting they're good fighters. Like people tend to say that they're shit bums or whatever, and it's unfortunate because these fighters are good. Like they're good fighters. Um, they're trying to, uh, you know, get to the champion in a division that they're great at, and it's just unfortunate that Shevchenko is there. She's just so high level, and everyone knows the story of how good she is. Everyone's talked about it so much. She's a minus 1600 favorite, like that should say it within itself. So I think this fight is definitely going to be self-explanatory. I don't think Maya has anything other than being durable and strong to pose problems against Shevchenko, but I think this goes to Shevchenko easily. She just shows her striking dominance. I don't think she'll bring her to the ground in this fight. Um, I don't think she would do that. Shevchenko likes to show how well-rounded she is when she fights. She tries. Sometimes it seems like she goes out of her way to bring in wrestling, to bring in her clinch, to bring in her ground game. Like she brings in everything, and I think sometimes that surprises some opponents. Although they know that she's great everywhere, I think it just surprises that she's so willing to. She's sort of like DJ in the sense of he would use his wrestling a lot, he would use his footwork a lot, he'd use his ground game a lot. Like he used all of his ability and all of his skills, and Shevchenko does that as well. And I think that surprises some people. Um, if she uses her wrestling and BJJ, I'll be a little surprised. I think she's just gonna put Maya away personally. Um, so we'll see how that goes and which way that happens. Mike Perry versus Tim Means. Perry had a horrible weight cut. I think he's going to look awful in this fight. I'm surprised he got to 175. I'm going to be honest. I thought it was going to be somewhere in 178 range with his weight. He did dab on the weight scale, so everyone knows that if he dabs, that ultimately makes him okay. We can't be mad at him because he dabbed. I'm just kidding. He probably should make weight and not be a fucking idiot. Um, Eating food like that a week before the fight is definitely disrespectful, I think, to the organization and the opponent that you're fighting. Like, unless you're um, uh, like, like someone like John Jones who like doesn't train, who like didn't train for fights and just like showed up, made weight, and beat people. Like, he's not nowhere near in that universe of being able to do that, being lazy. So and with his record right now, he can't really back it up. And with all the other outside of the ring things, I think he should definitely just kind of shut up, make weight, fight, keep a job. So yeah, that's kind of disappointing. I think if he loses, he might be cut. I do have a feeling that the UFC will be a little bit sympathetic and keep them. I think they do that with some fighters that have a little bit of problems that aren't incredibly outrageous. Like, yes, what the allegations are definitely serious. I'm not trying to say they're not, but he's not out. Look, they kept John Jones, and he went through those things that he did. Um, you know what I mean? Like they'll be by the fighter. They won't definitely throw them into the dumpster, but if Mike Perry loses and he does more outside of the octagon things, I think it's a possibility the UFC drops him. I'm just saying that the UFC doesn't generally kind of leave a fighter out in the open because I think they know that fighters they're very like people don't want to say it, but they're emotional people. Like they're fighting. I think you have to be an emotional person and very mentally strong to be a fighter, but I think sometimes when fighters do go through these things, they can be mentally unstable, and I think the UFC knows that. So dropping a fighter, like in the mind of the fighter, that's kind of the only thing that they know how to do. They only know how to fight, and if they're dropped out of the biggest organization, that could potentially bring them into a dark road. And I think the UFC understands that. So I think until they do something completely outrageous like actually kill someone or something like of a actual incredibly serious crime. I'm not saying that domestic violence isn't a crime, but I'm not sure where that investigation is going right now. Like there like like is he in jail? Like is that's kind of what I'm saying. He's currently fighting, so I don't think anything incredibly serious is going on there. Plus, he's currently denying it. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but if he says that his mother has a history of overreacting, which isn't something out of, that's a normal thing for mothers to do. It could have been something that wasn't so serious. Um, but if he did do something violent to uh, his mother or his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, he should definitely be punished for that. I'm not saying that he shouldn't. Uh, and then going down, we have a couple of other fights. Oh, the winner of that fight, yeah, I think Tim Means just beats him up. But Mike Perry he's a strong dude. He could come out there and be a savage. I don't know. Caitlin Shikagian versus Calvillo. I think Shikagan uses her footwork and just how kickboxes Calvillo. Maybe Calvillo makes one or two takedowns, but I think Shikagan is pretty good on the ground. She'll probably get up. She's a good takedown, or she's good at getting up. Um, she also does like playing on the ground a little bit, so I hope she doesn't get too. Calvillo's tricky. She's very slick and she can pull off some great, moves on the ground. So I hope that Kagan is skilled enough to be aware of the danger if she is in danger and get out of it. If she doesn't, she can get caught. Calvillo's a little dangerous on the standing too, but I think she punches a little short. So I think Kagan wins there with how long she is with her kicks. Um, but Calvillo can definitely catch some kicks, mix it up, create scrambles, get her to the ground. That's definitely a path to victory. Calvillo's a favorite in this fight, which I find interesting. I'm not downplaying Calvillo's ability, but I'm a little surprised by that. Um, Maybe the recency bias with the fight with Shevchenko. I don't know. I think Shikagian wins, in my opinion. But if Calvillo wins, I wouldn't be surprised. She's a very skilled fighter. Uh, Good path to victory. Each fighter's good path to victory here. It'll be a good fight. I think this should be like more of a pick'em, in my opinion. I'm not saying Shikagan should be a favorite. I think it should be way closer than what it is. Uh, Shogun versus Craig. Man, like I hate when people think. Well, I say this a lot on Twitter too, but whenever like an older fighter is fighting and I say that they're gonna get blasted into a shadow round, like it's definitely a high probability. But when it's like a heavyweight or a light heavyweight or heavyweight fight, there's always that chance. Like the old man power and old man strength fucking sometimes shows itself. Or Loskia showed that recently in his fight with Bozer, and some other older fights and fighters. So it's definitely possible that Shogun can win. He's a strong dude. He's the old man, but I think Craig wins. I think it's a pretty good bet to put on Craig to win. But it's Shogun. Don't always have that in the back of your mind that the Shogun can shows experience and he can do well. But he's also old, and we'll see how that goes. This is the next fight is probably my favorite fight of the card. Moreno versus Raval. I think Raval may be a fan in his last fight, and watching his highlights before that, I called the submission that he was gonna do, but he's crazy. He can get cracked pretty good because he's so crazy on the feet and on the ground. Cara France rocked him, and then Ravel just did a spinning elbow, like immediately after getting knocked down. He's crazy. Marino's a pretty tough guy. I think this is going to be fight of the night. I think a lot of people have said that. I think it's just going to be similar to that Cara France fight. Maybe not as chaotic, but it definitely can get that chaotic. Like it's going to be a crazy fight. Um, they both have really consistent outputs and they're strong dudes. That'll be a very good fight. I hope Royval prevails. I'm rooting for him, but uh, this will be a definite next contender for the belt. Buckley versus Wright. I think there's just so much hype behind Buckley. He's a very athletic guy, but uh, you know, when you're this, I don't want to say this low in the rankings because that sounds mean, but when you're up and coming in the UFC and you're fighting other guys that are up and coming, they want it just as bad despite skills, and they can, it just takes one punch, and we've seen that many times in the prelim fights and early prelim fights of uh, underdogs winning convincingly over other fighters, or just outright grinding it out and winning a decision. So that's definitely a possibility. We'll see what happens. It should be a good, exciting fight. They have very strong outputs, and they're big guys. So we'll see how that goes. And then we have a few other um, fights in the lower card, like the Shevchenko sister versus Lipsky, and Rodriguez and Dalby, Joban Gooden. These are all great fights. So I hope you guys do have a chance to check them out. I think they're going to be great fights. Like they have really good matchups on this card that could really show some good skilled finishes, like the Calvillo Chukagian. Like if that goes to the ground, you're going to see a nice scramble and a good submission possibly. We threw a Craig, you could possibly see a good knockout from any guy or a submission. Like that could be exciting. Or Val Marino, there's some highlights in there. Buckley, he has a crazy highlight, but Wright's a strong guy. He has a lot of output. He can definitely land a knockout, or I mean a finish. And Joe Band and etc. Mike Perry, Biggie. Like there's gonna be some highlights from this card, and I think it's really gonna show itself. Like it has if it goes that potential route. So tune in, and we will probably talk about that on Twitter. So enjoy the card, my friends. I hope you place your bets and win money and have some fun. That's what MMA Saturday nights are all about. So I hope you enjoy. We're going to look into some Twitter questions. I posted a post on, when was that? The 17th? I don't know what fucking date that was. I think it was Wednesday or something. Tuesday. With the first episode of Look Into It. Thank you for whomever listened to my first episode. I was definitely nervous, and I had I don't know, I had like a bit of a cold, not the Rona, but you could tell in my voice it was hard to make it loud. So hopefully this episode sounds a bit better. I'm using a different mic. I'm using my worse headset mic because I'm a lazy asshole who didn't want to set up my other mic. But hopefully you have a better audio quality this time around. Move my mic up a little bit. So I'm just going to read top to bottom on this post. And I'm really bad with names, so I'm probably just going to say random shit in your name, and hopefully you recognize yourself. And some of these aren't even questions, but we're going to read them all. Antonio Pineta says, just subscribe, bro. Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. We got Harry Balsack saying, have you looked into James Charles? I have. I think everyone has. It's definitely an obvious question. Baked Dana, why won't you answer my calls anymore? I just want to see my kids. I'm just going to skip that question for legal reasons. We have Camille. I'm not even going to attempt his name. Barim Bolo Master. I don't know what that means, but I hope you're a master of it. If you could make anyone in any division a dominant champ for the next 5 years, who would it be and why? Okay, so this is a great question because you said anyone, so that doesn't mean it has to be a champion currently because you didn't say current champion. So let's go with someone outrageous. Let's make um, hmm let's make CM Punk the dominant champion of the heavyweight division for the next 5 years. he said dominant champ, so I think he's just gonna absolutely destroy Francis Ngannou easily with one clean punch to the jaw. So he's gonna be a dominant champion for the next 5 years, and that's obviously the reason why he would be. He's definitely the goat. So that's a good pick. Other than that, a serious answer, I'd probably pick Francis Ngannou. Imagine if he was a dominant champion for 5 years. I'm sure it would get boring after a while, like Mike Tyson, where everyone just expected him to knock someone out. But I'm just imagining the highlights he would get out of it, or um, someone equally as powerful just decimating their opponents. That'd be entertaining, but it would get boring after a while. Matthew Neville, do you think the UFC will ever give Tony a title shot? Can't wait to listen. I will definitely look into it. Thanks, bro. Um, he's definitely getting older. I think if whatever they do with the lightweight fucking tournament thing that's going on, hopefully he does well. I hope everyone involved in that does well. Um, will he get a title shot? He just has to prove that everything he said about the Justin fight, about him, training for Khabib for however long, and then fighting Justin at the last minute was his ultimate reason. I'm not saying he's making an excuse, but that's definitely a reason why he performed differently, or so he said. My personal belief is that the weight cut actually took an effect. To how big of an effect, I don't know, but when anybody cuts that much weight, so close together, it definitely affects your body. Um, I think that affected his mind a little bit and his body. I think it was more so his body wasn't reacting as much as he wanted it and was frustrating him, but nothing outrageous. I think that was a factor for sure. I hope he does well. I think they'll give it to him if he does well. I think if you start seeing him slow down and get beat up like he did in the Justin fight, it's definitely his age getting to him. Yo, Eddie Podcast, let's go. Yeah, man. Chase says, if you could match make for one day, what would be the first fight you made? Um, like, can this be anybody or anybody in the UFC? So if it was matchmaker for people in the UFC right now, do I just get one fight, or is the first fight would I make? I don't know. I'd make well since I'm the matchmaker for one day. I guess I'm making a lot of fights, but the first fight I would make would be the Stipe and Ngannou fight. I would do that right away. I would give John more time to get huge, and then have John fight the winner, and then fight if he wants. I don't think John is gonna fight Izzy at light heavyweight. Let me tell you, if John's serious about putting on weight for heavyweight, to get John to go back to light heavyweight and fight Izzy is a fucking strong task. Like that's trying to get someone to lose that much weight and then fight is a very difficult thing for fighters, especially that much. It's not like 10 pounds like the other divisions. This is a lot more weight, and it's more so seems like a lot of muscle that he's putting on. Um, he's going to be thick, and to get that off is going to be tough. So I think if they fight, it's going to be at heavyweight, but it's going to be like very low heavyweight. Like it's going to be like they're going to be at the minimum limit for sure, closer to it. But it'll still be an equally great fight. But I would just try and create that narrative with the matchmaking and then kind of continue what's going on down below. I think the UFC is doing a great job of doing matchmaking. I think they try their best to do the fights that the fans want, but if it's unavailable, they go the next route and just go down the list. I think they do a good job of creating good fights without waiting too long. Sometimes they do wait too long, don't worry. I know that. Was the best journeyman? Um, there's been a lot of good journeymen in the UFC. Um, some with better records than others, but you also have to have a definition for journeyman. Like George Vidal probably has the better record of journeyman in terms of how great his fights were with numbers and highlights and resume with who he was beating. Um, but there's obviously guys like, do you consider? I don't know if I consider Cowboy a journeyman because he's always been very like he always got close to a title fight. Like he always gets really close and goes up and down the rankings. Like would you consider that a journeyman, or is that like kind of like a gatekeeper? Like, there's a lot of definitions that we have to define. I don't know what to define them as. I don't think Cowboy's really a true journeyman. Like, he's definitely gone up to different divisions and fought the who's who and whatever. So is that what you define a journeyman? Um, Maybe. I don't know. He's definitely, if you would, then yeah, he's definitely a great journeyman. He has a good resume. He fights really tough guys. There's a lot of journeymen, but those are two guys that would fit the bill for sure. How do you see Yan versus Sterling going? By David. The last question was by Fall Edmund. Sorry, uh, sorry, sorry, Edmund. David Poe though asks, how do you see Yan versus Sterling going? I think Yan is getting super overhyped in this fight. Sterling's getting underrated in this fight, but I do see people going the Sterling way here and there. But that said, if Jan goes out and steamroll Sterling, then that just shows that he can be a dominant champion for that division. He can be a potential GOAT for the new modern lower weights. You see that the guys are getting older down there, and the GOATs are moving on to something else. So Jan would be the next guy to create a new era. You know, he definitely has the potential. He has the skills. So if he goes out and shows that, he can definitely fit that bill. Sterling, though, I think he does have the possibility of going out there and showing his skills. He's great on the ground. He has great movement, great footwork. I think his stand-up is getting better and better each time he has a great fight camp. I think he has a good team that look at his skills and try to make them better. Um, yeah, I think he's just gonna keep improving. He's always gonna be in that top three zone. I think he's a great fighter with great skills. So he's so strong. He's big. I think he can. I definitely think he has a path to victory in this fight. I think he could show his if he has the footwork that I think he does. I think he can go out there and surprise some people with landing some jabs and contending against Jan's stand-up, avoiding his power. I'm sure Jan's gonna land. I'm not saying he won't land at all, but Sterling can definitely show his skills and show that his like if he gets Jan on the ground, Jan's strong and skilled, but Sterling is very tricky and he has very good technique. So I think it's a very good fight. It could be a very well brought out fight. I think Jan that would be a good fight under Jan's belt. Like that would be a very good fight, like name under if he wins. Same with Sterling. If they win, that'll be an immediate rematch. I think they'd want to make that rematch right away if it's a good fight. I think that's can if Sterling wins, which I think he has the skills to. I think that can create a very good rivalry. I think that will be a very like a new modern rivalry. Nothing crazy, just between those guys. They're very skilled guys, and then the rest of the division is like there's a lineup. There's some guys in there that can uh, really can make that like that division's gonna get stacked. It's gonna be a great division in a couple of years. The only podcast on Twitter I'll ever care about by King Mando. Yeah, all the other podcasts are. There's a couple good gems, um, but there's some bad ones. Mine's pretty bad. Also, for my question, if you could teach everyone in the world one thing, any idea, concept, belief, basic skill, just any one thing to everyone in the world, what would it be and why would you choose it? Fuck, that's a hard question because you could go the lame route. You could think of a basic skill that everyone should know. You can pick so many things. You could pick a greedy one. You could pick a really generous one. Sorry about that. Taking some coffee. Hmm. Ooh, that's a hard one. I have a lot of like. Um, there's obviously some obvious ones that you could choose that are easy and that would be fair for everyone. Um, but a skill, you could pick a funny one too. Like imagine if everyone was like super awesome at guitar. Like you walk around everywhere, everyone's just fucking rocking out on a guitar. That's not my pick, but that'd be funny. Or like a random instrument like a tuba. Imagine if everyone was like a super good at tuba and was playing tubas everywhere. That'd be hilarious. Um, but if it's like idea, concept, belief, that's a little different because then you're getting into some psychology stuff and some mentalities that I'm a very mentality driven person. I have a lot of beliefs that I think people should uh, kind of I don't want to say like fully believe in, but definitely gravitate towards that are not only good for human nature, but good for living life and creating expectations. I think like literally just expectations is a giant value in my life. I think having people understand expectations would create a lot of different, uh, it would definitely change a lot of people's mentalities. I think um, expectations is huge, and a lot of people forget and ignore fair expectations for your basic human thought and goals. Like expectations is a big value I hold. I put that value towards everything because expectations drives your it drives your mental state. Like if you're trying something new, you have to have expectations. Like in my like let's say you're trying out a new hobby, or like I don't go to BJJ classes, so um, if I were to join one, you have to have an accurate expectation that would be accurate towards your own individual. So you have to look at your athletic background and your mentality and your knowledge of whatever you're getting into. If this is BJJ, it'd be knowledge, but you have to put the expectation versus the actual competition and what you're actually going to get. So that involves research and just knowing what you're getting yourself into because like every normal human that's smart, going into a BJJ class with zero experience, and let's say you have a little bit of an athletic background and you're somewhat knowledgeable of the sport, you would have the expectation of going into this that you would have the athletic ability to understand the different techniques that they are performing. But you would also have the expectation, because you have an athletic background, I would assume that you've been in an athletic team, you would know that there or sport I mean you would know that there's learning curves to sports. If I were to go play basketball right now, like go to a if there was a basketball lesson or team tryout, I have an athletic background, but I don't know that much of basketball, so my expectation would be there would be a large learning curve and I wouldn't do well immediately. So in this case, this would be the same situation. Sure, I'm knowledgeable of the sport and techniques, and I have an athletic background, but there's a big learning curve, and you have to have that expectation. Same with that goes with everything. So if you use this thought and explanation. Imagine if you were someone that had no expectations of what you were going into and you were very confident that you would do well in that environment of a BJJ lesson for your very first time. And let's say you had the same background, except the expectation was different. If you had the expectation that you're going to go in there and dominate, the result would be intensely different and it would change your mentality state afterwards. The difference would be you would be angry, you would be sad, you would be there'd be a lot of different emotions of the result of the execution of the expectation. If you expected to dominate, you're stupid. You're gonna or if you had the expectation of dominating, you're pretty dumb because you're gonna get dominated in that environment with experts that are teaching you and showing you, and you're rolling with very highly skilled people. You're gonna get wrecked. You're gonna be humbled, and your ego is going to change. So if you have an expectation of you're going to dominate, you go in there and get dominated. You're gonna be sad, guilty, like all these different emotions. Where if you had the expectation of, yeah, I'm gonna get dominated. I gotta learn. This is a big steep learning curve. You're gonna have a different motivation afterwards because you're gonna take more information in when you're executing the lesson, and you're not like sure you're going to be humbled because it's such a challenging technique and sport for the learning. So you are going to be humbled and your ego is going to be put in place, but it's going to have different emotion to keep you motivated because you were more fair with your expectation. So I find expectation um, that I definitely have that value really high, and that's how I put it towards a lot of my thought process. And I think that's something that a lot of people would appreciate because it ties to everything, man. It ties to, I think, a bit of feeling sad and a little bit of depression. I'm not saying that solves depression in any means, but it can definitely change a lot of outcomes that would definitely help not make you more sad if people had better expectations of things they were doing. It goes through everything: cooking, driving, everything. Just having fair expectations for your personal individual. I think that's a very valuable belief and idea. Good question. I think there's a lot of good answers. There's so many good answers, and funny answers, and not so good answers. Stockton Kangaroo, who out of all the current champions in the different divisions have potential to start continue a long title reign? Jan, we talked about Jan a little bit. We talked about Figgy earlier. Um, those are definitely guys that are just starting their champion reign that would last a while. Um, there's a lot. I think all the champions right now are very strong. I think we have a very good champion list. I think Jan could be one of those guys. I think people think Jan um, Blahovic won't be as strong as the other champions, which is fair. That's totally fair. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that he could be a strong dude. Like, he has a good resume. He could have, I think like having a few um, belt defends or defending your belt a few times, like 3 or 4 times. That's 2 years. That's pretty good for a champion. Like, we have to think like John, GSP, Silva, all these guys. Those are guys in the in the goat talk. Like, those are rare. Even look at Connor. He's one of the most popular fighters. He's never defended a belt. So I mean, defending a belt a few times for a few years is that's very undervalued. I think that's very, very undervalued, and that's a very good accomplishment for a champion. Um, so if he does that, I'm not saying he would be a goat or anything, but that's a very strong accomplishment for his career. I think he can do that. Does he have the ability to do more? Yeah, for sure. If he continues to do better, for sure. But we have to see how the light heavyweight division goes. There's a lot of strong guys coming up, so we'll see how he does and how the division does. But yeah, there's a lot of good champions currently. I think Jan, Figgy, those are guys that could last a long time. Izzy, all those guys. Uh, Stanley, if you could pick someone to replace Dana, who would it be? That's a very good question. I thought about this a lot. I really like Dana as a president and what he does for the company. I think he has, um, his complications with some of the things that he said or done. I think everybody does. I'm not trying to downplay them, but I think if you get hung up on them too much, you're gonna really get blinded by some of the very good things he does for the sport, for the company, and for people. Um, I think he has a very good head for this sport. So for a replacement, I think you would have to think of the things that you would want to improve on the UFC. There's a couple that everyone thinks of, like fighter pay and other things, fighter relationships, stuff like that. But you want someone to uphold his, I would guess, current standard of the UFC with how he runs the company and how some of his ideas and his worth ethic. I think you'd have to find someone with a similar mentality in that way with all of his strengths. You have to find someone that does his strengths and a little bit of the things that he could work on. So you would have to find someone that would do that if you want to find a good replacement. Um, I think there's a lot of guys that could do, or a few guys. I think Daniel Cormier would be one. I think he's very fair and understanding, but also understands rules and like process. And he's a very strong ethic guy. This would be a weird answer, but I think Henry Cejudo falls into that category in terms of his mentality. I'm not saying that he looks like a businessman, and he doesn't. I don't know if he has that experience running a business or that things. I forget what he went to school for. He could have went to school for something important towards business. I don't know, but he has the mentality of being fair, driven, and following process because of how professional he is. So I think that's another good answer. So you'd have to find people similar to that mentality, and I think there's a lot of good examples, and those are two. DC would be a good one. I think he would run the company good. I think he's a good face. He's good with the media. He's very fair and understanding. He follows process. He knows the sport. He loves the sport. So I think that's a good answer. But yeah, there's a lot of guys. A couple of more questions. Coke Jones is go. Would you give head for 10K? And if not, why? That's 10K, dude. Fucking easy. What would it like? That's a lot of money, dude. Let's fucking go. Isaac, if you could change one thing in the UFC, what would it be? And then Poirier's guillotine. If y'all don't say fighter pay, I think fighter pay is the easy answer, but I think. Oh, this is. I have not a long answer, but I would change. This isn't. This sucks because I would rather change something within the commission than the UFC, but I can't because the UFC isn't the commission. If that makes sense. Like I would rather change more things in the commission than the UFC. Like I think the fighter pay answer is obvious, but I think people get lost in fighter pay because I think fighter pay people that are fair about fighter pay understand that the fighter pay only affects the people in the early prelims and prelims that make that 10K mark, like and under, like 8K sometimes. I think I've seen before. I could be wrong, but like sometimes you see low numbers like that, and you feel guilty and like surprised. And I think that area is what people would fix, and I agree. I think that number should be higher. But I think as you go up, I don't think the guys like Connor, Khabib, even like Overeem makes a shitload of money. I mean, he should. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but those guys that make a lot of money, Jones, GSP, they make fair money. I like they make fair money. Maybe they would get like a very small increase because if it has to be a small increase because the percentages would go higher, they would make more on a bigger percentage, duh. And because the value's higher, the percentage would make more money. So it would have to be a fair increase that isn't crazy. That would help the lower bottom that are only making 10K. They should make 20, 30K per fight. You would want their fighting career to be equal to like a job, a self-sustaining job. But you also have to be fair. Like these are fighters that maybe aren't. I don't want to say as into fighting because that's not fair. But they don't have the resume. Um, I think this is going to be a hard explanation, but if I were to get a job at a company in a business, I'm gonna, depending on my resume and my experience, I'm gonna start making the bottom of the salary or hourly wage, whatever. You're gonna make the entry level pay. The entry level pay for the UFC should be higher. It shouldn't be the 10K, 12K, 15K. It should be much higher, or per fight. It should be much higher so that the job could be a sustainable actual job, like equal to. It, I think Dana is correct in saying that this isn't a job. Like I forget what he said, but it was something like it wasn't a job or whatever. Like this is a privilege or something. He said something like that. But yeah, no, like being a fighter, like I don't want to say it's a job, but it is a job. Like they're making money. Like it's hard. I don't know. Like is it a job? Like is being a football player or an NHL player, like is that, would you put that in the category of job? I don't know if I would or not. You know what I mean? So it's hard. I'm just having trouble explaining myself, but you'd want the lower pay guys to have a higher number dollars. So I just want to be fair to those guys. Sometimes you see the list and it's just so crazy how much some of these guys make and you feel sad. So yeah, they need to make more money that is sustainable for their life. That's not a lot of money. If you fight 3 times at 10K, that's only 30K. I make more than that. Like I think a lot of people make more than that, and that's like a minimum wage job, and it's not really fair for an entry level job at a business. You know what I mean? Like they're a corporation. They should have an entry level salary. Um, I don't think they should make salary. I'm just saying like they should have an entry level amount. That's fair. That doesn't 10K doesn't seem fair. So yeah, that's my answer on that. Thanks everyone for the questions. I thought those were good questions. Um, yeah, I'll probably do this more often. This was fun. I like answering questions. I like giving answers that kind of reflect how I think, and I give a reason for my answer. Sometimes my answers are weird, I guess. I don't know. I just try and be fair and try and think what's the best, uh, given some of the ideas that I think of. So there's definitely answers that could be better. There's definitely better options and stuff like that, but these are just what I'm thinking. Maybe someone has better examples. I just don't know what, like I don't know. I don't know everybody that would be the best replacement for Danny. You know what I mean? Maybe someone knows someone that I don't know, and that's a better answer. And then in that case, I would like to know that person. You know what I mean? Like I just don't know them. So if there was a better answer, maybe that would be interesting because then I could, you look into that person and then you figure out, then you find someone new that could be a cool person, and then you look into what they do. You know what I mean? Someone who's that heavily like a workaholic, like Dana White's a workaholic, like he wants the best for his company. So finding about someone who's has a similar mentality would be interesting, especially if they own a company, because then that company probably succeeds. And if it's a good company, then you'd be interested in that company and figure out what they want to do. If it's like a business that sells a product or promotes something, you know what I mean? Because then it's probably a good product, and then maybe that's something that you found. Then you found out something cool. Um, so yeah, thanks for the questions, guys. I really appreciated them. And that about wraps up this episode of Let's Look Into It. Thanks everyone for listening. I really appreciate that. It's a nice Saturday, so go and enjoy your Saturday. We have some fights later, so enjoy the fights. I appreciate all the questions. They were good questions and they were fun. Sorry if I missed anybody's name. I wasn't doing that intentionally. Um, yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate the support and everything on Twitter. I appreciate it a lot. Like it's pretty cool, and you guys are super nice. Uh, I definitely appreciate that a lot, and I respect it. So yeah, go out and enjoy your day, um, and we'll look into it next time. And until then, have a good one. Thanks.